Okay, and again, thank you so much, and welcome to the session, COMMS 101. Today we have a special guest speaker or featured speaker for today is Dr. Lan Ni. She's a full professor at the Valenti School of Communication. She's a faculty who teaches classes in public relations, and she has mentored and chaired thesis and comms committees, dozens of them over the years. So she has lots of experience to share with you in terms of what does it take to prepare for the comms, what are some of the rules and strategies to get successful and be successful to finish this last, I guess, hurdle before you get your master's degrees in our department. So we're gonna spend the first, maybe, I don't know how much you need, maybe Lan, about half an hour or 20 minutes, or how much she needs to just let her a bit.
Maybe 20 minutes.
Okay, just so she presents some of the main issues and points that you guys need, and then we're gonna open it up for questions at the end of her presentation. So without further ado, Lan, take it over.
Okay, thanks everyone. I have prepared a small kind of handout, and Dr. Tamai will share with you later, but I will be basically going over some of the key issues before you take comms and during the comms and after, just so that you kind of have an idea of what how everything goes, and then I will spend the rest of the time like answering questions, and some of the questions might also be answered better by Dr. Tamai. I quickly browsed through some of your questions, so we'll do that. Okay, so first of all, making the decision basically, whether you want to take comms or whether you think maybe thesis or applied project will be better for you. So there are a couple of factors that you need to consider. First and foremost, what do you plan to do in the future? So some of our students plan to go on to a doctoral program in the future. So for that, we strongly recommend thesis option, because you do need to demonstrate that you are able to perform independent research, right? And then some of our students would like to really show that they are able to apply the course materials in a real life situation or a real life problem. So for that, you it's better for you to choose the applied project option. For comprehensive exam though, most likely you will make this choice or make this decision if, number one, you don't plan to use a lot of research or independent kind of research in your future career. So if that's the case, then yeah, you can consider comms. The other thing is you want very much to graduate on time, and you want to really take most of the things under your own control. Meaning, if you take comms, all you need to do is to form a committee, talk to the committee members, and then complete your exam questions in a set period of time, 7 days, okay? So that means you have a lot more control over when you do it and how you do it. This does not apply to any of the other two options. With thesis and applied project, there are so many, I guess, uncertainties and contingency situations that you will find it very, very difficult to get everything under your own control. Number three, the third factor you need to consider is you need to make sure that you have the ability and you also enjoy integrating all the course materials together, and also you are able to produce coherent arguments based on all the different classes that you have taken. The last factor is that you should feel comfortable working for an extensive kind of period of time, like 7 days consecutively. Some students feel that they are not able to really focus, or if their job situation prevents them from doing this, right? So if that's the case, then you probably should not consider taking the comps. So these are a few factors or conditions that you need to consider before you make the decision. And then if you do decide that you want to do comps, this is the right thing for me, then you need to start planning at least a semester before your final graduation semester. Because first of all, you need to meet with Dr. Tamai to make sure that you have met all the requirements for taking the comps in your next semester. And then you need to choose an advisor. And for those of you who enter, I guess, this semester or afterwards, you should already have a kind of advisor at the beginning of your program. But those of you who join us earlier, you do need to pick a particular faculty member as your advisor, and that person needs to be in your major. So if you are a PR student, you need to find someone who teaches PR. And then you need to form the committee, the comps committee. Again, there are some kind of slight change here. For those of you who joined us, who enrolled before this semester, fall 2020, you need to have one person in your major as your chair. And you need to have one other person in your major as your second member. And then you have to have another faculty member in your minor as your third committee member. But as far as I understand, starting from this semester, those of you who enrolled this semester, your chair will be someone in your major, and then your second member will be in your minor area, and then the third one will be a professor who teaches your methodology classes. It can be either quantitative or qualitative. I see a chat here. Oh, that's okay. Okay, so, then something that most students will need to do, and with this current condition, you can do this virtually, is that you need to meet with each individual committee member prior to your actually taking the comps. You need to go over some of the materials with them, and also very importantly, you need to let them you need to get their expectations for what you are supposed to prepare and how you are supposed to answer some of the questions. So that's very important. And in the past, we've had situations where students failed to reach out to one of their committee members, committee members, and then as a result, there was some kind of misunderstanding when they actually started to take the comps. So I strongly encourage all of you to meet with all of them early in the process. And then some procedural matters here is you need to enroll in the comps exam class during your graduation semester. And then also you need to kind of talk with your committee and try to set a time. As much as possible, try to set your exam during a week where you don't get distracted. And if possible, if you are working full-time or part-time, talk to your supervisor to see if you can get like some days off, because you do need some concentrated time to work on this. It's a lot. Some of you asked questions about like how the exam, what does the exam look like, right? Again, there might be some differences depending on whether you're a new student or if you are like a student who enrolled prior to this semester. The new requirement is that you are going to answer 2 major questions, 1 minor question, and 1 research method question. Whereas if you enrolled with us like prior to this semester, you are going to answer 3 major questions, 2 minor questions, and then 1 research method question. So either way, you need to be thoroughly familiar with both your major area and your minor area, as well as the methodology. So how to prepare for the exam? The graduate faculty members have actually composed a comprehensive question bank. Dr. Tamai should have the latest edition, and I think all of us also have that. So please make sure to request that question bank from your advisor, because that will help you kind of get an idea of what the questions look like and how you can potentially prepare beforehand. Also, make sure you gather all the course syllabi, the readings, your previous term papers or proposals, or sometimes exams in different classes. Get everything together, and then try to, if possible, try to form some kind of study groups. It's in my experience, in the past, a lot of students find it very beneficial if they can chat with each other, help each other prepare for the exams, and also very importantly to offer some kind of emotional support, because this can be pretty intimidating to some students. How to prepare? In my handout, I have provided some kind of examples. The first one is from Dr. Vardaman. She had her kind of example as to how she prepared for some of the questions. And the second example is how I prepared for my exam. So, and I will talk about those later. But essentially, I strongly encourage you to start preparing a semester before, right? Where you gather all the information and then form your own like mental structure. So regardless of which concentration or major you are in, like health comm or mass comm or PR, there are different kind of theoretical approaches to your discipline, and there are some fundamental kind of theories and theorists that you need to know about, right? So form your kind of mental structure of how different theories have evolved, how they are related to each other, what are some of the main assumptions from some of the most important theorists, and then just try to get some kind of outline to help you put everything together. In my handout, there's one thing that I want to mention is that you can start to work on some kind of outline for your answers. We don't recommend that you write out complete or comprehensive answers beforehand, because you don't want to be kind of stuck in what you have produced in case the COMM questions you actually get are very different from what you have prepared for. But it's always good practice to generate some sort of brief outline so that you can make sure that you don't forget some of the key issues or key theoretical perspectives. And then during the actual exam, time management is really essential. I cannot emphasize this enough, because I remember every time I talk to my advisee about how you need to plan out all the different questions, try not to spend too much time on questions 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you totally run out of time for your questions 5 and 6, right? Every time students will say, oh yeah, I will make sure to do that. But then a lot of times they end up actually running out of time. So what I would suggest is really to generate some sort of outlines on day 1 for all questions. Because after 3 or 4 days of very extensive researching and writing, your brain may not really be functioning as well as it is on day 1, right? So try not to jump into writing right away on day 1. Instead, use that day to thoroughly think through everything, sort through everything, and then generate some sort of outline first. Make sure that you cover all the essential stuff. You can fill out all the blanks later, but you have to have the general, like different sections or subheadings right there, so that by day 4 or 5, you don't feel totally kind of overwhelmed and you forget things. So that's really, really critical. In terms of the grading rubric, I think most of our graduate faculty members are pretty consistent. We do need you to demonstrate that you are able to make arguments, but based on some solid evidence. So you may use a lot of theoretical kind of writings but make sure that you properly cite them, and also make sure that you cite from a range of different sources. For example, I've seen students who have relied on pretty much one or two sources in their whole answer. That's not acceptable. You have to demonstrate to us that you have understood and kind of integrated a wide range of scholarly writings when you are making your arguments in your answers. And then also another thing to make sure to remind yourself of is answer all the questions. Depending on the different questions given by different professors, some of us will have a general or broad question, and then it will consist of several sub-questions. Make sure that you very clearly specify your different sections of answers that correspond to each of those sub-questions. Again, I've seen this from past students. They would totally elaborate on the sub-question 1 or 2, and then they completely forget the last 1 or 2 sub-questions. So that's really unfortunate, because if you don't give us any answer, there's really no way that you can pass that question, regardless of how well your answers to the other sub-questions are. The other thing is many of you will be answering questions that require some sort of application of theories, meaning we are not only asking you to summarize what theorist A or theorist B have said, right? You need to consolidate the materials and then apply that to a real life situation. So when you are doing that, again, this is taken from some past students. When you're doing that, try to reach some kind of balance. Don't elaborate too much on the case to the extent that when it's time for you to apply the theories, you run out of space. I've seen students who have spent like maybe 3/4 of the space discussing in very detailed manner about the case, how it evolved, how different players have participated, etc. And then at the end, there's only this very small paragraph saying, oh, we need to apply the situational crisis communication theory to this case. And there's no way for the faculty members to know how exactly do you plan to apply that theory. And then the other extreme, which I would like to warn you against, is that you spend too much time elaborating on the theories, the principles, the variables, the relationships, the different assumptions. And then you, again, at the end of your answer, we don't see the exact strategies that you have generated to apply the theories to the actual case. Again, try to keep some kind of healthy balance between the theoretical elaboration and the case application, because we need to see both. And finally, it's really some of the basic stuff like the writing, grammar, punctuation, and also, let's see, APA style, right? Make sure that when you cite, you follow the APA style. And then also, in terms of some basic formatting, make sure that your well, actually, this one, Dr. Samai might clarify later. I thought that most faculty members expect somewhere between, somewhere around 5 pages per answer. But again, I think different professors may have some flexibility around there. But I would like to also mention that if you only, let's say, have 2 or 3 pages, most likely you're not going to be able to provide answers in a very comprehensive and solid way. So page numbers are not everything, but they do sometimes tell how well the answers are. So make sure you pay attention to that. I think these are my main kind of issues or kind of reminders for everyone. Dr. Samai, are you able to share the last 2 pages of the handout, like the example study outline 1 and 2. I cannot hear you. Are you?
The document I shared in the chat as you gave.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So
yeah.
I'm hoping. The other thing that I shared in the chat is also the COMMS bank. So that's a bank of all the questions by major that have been asked in the past. So I shared that for people. So please just download these documents and save them somewhere for yourself for later, just to have them.
Okay, yeah, so if everyone have access to the handout, if you can, I will very briefly talk about the last 2 pages. So basically, it's an example of how you can organize and integrate what you have learned from a particular field, right? So if you look at the example study outline 1, you see the kind of evolution, right? The early paradigm, there were different kind of theories, and then there's the current paradigm. It talks about the political economy approach, the media effects tradition, feminist approach, etc. So you can use that format to help you prepare. And then the second one, the second one is what I kind of advise my students in PR. We have all these different paradigms in PR, the functional approach, the co-creational approach, civil society, behavioral, strategic, etc., etc. And I encourage them to really sort through all the readings and all the different papers to, Dr. Samai, can you resend the outline for the handout? I think Sarah said that she joined a little late. To continue, so I would encourage my students to kind of identify what is PR, okay? Because again, different theoretical perspectives think of PR in a very different way. What is the purpose of PR? What is the focus of study? And how do they perceive the key construct of publics? And then there's also some key words and how they study them. And then finally, some tools, some basic strategic management PR tools, and how they are critiqued and how they are applied. So you can use this kind of table to sort through everything so that by the end of your preparation, you don't see like hundreds of pages of stuff, right? You see this clearly laid out table. And if you need more details when you are answering the questions, you should have access to the readings that you have accumulated. Okay. So let's see if I can. Dr. Samai, I think Sarah and Emmanuel said they cannot access the handout.
I'm going to resend them again.
Yeah, but in the meantime, like I said, I'm kind of done with the main points that I want to get across to you guys. Feel free to ask your questions at this time, or any comments or anything.
I have a question.
Yes.
You were speaking about like sources for like each question. You said like 2 sources wouldn't be enough. So what would be a good amount of sources per question to use when answering questions?
Okay. Well, let me clarify. I didn't say that 2 sources are enough. I was giving an example where a student relied only on 2 sources throughout his answer. And I said that that's not acceptable.
Right. So I'm asking if 2 isn't enough.
Did you get what I was saying, Uniqua?
Yes. So I'm asking if, I know that you said 2 wasn't enough. I'm asking like, what is an adequate amount of sources for it? If, 2 isn't enough, like what would you say is a good amount of sources to have for it?
Oh. Okay, I don't think there's a magic number. And Dr. Samai can chime in later, but I would say if you're talking about one complete question, that's like 5 pages, right? Then I would say somewhere around like 20 scholarly sources will be adequate.
Okay.
And I also, I want to add on to what Dr. Ni said, that it's important that you discuss these with each faculty member that is in your committee, like members of your committee, because certain faculty have different, I guess, perceptions in terms of how much is enough. So that's very important that you discuss this with each and every faculty member and ask the same question to all of them. And then you're going to get some kind of a idea what would be the average based on the feedback you get from your committee member.
Yeah, and I would like to follow up, and also it also varies on different questions. So for example, if one question is particularly about the theoretical kind of review or critique, then I would expect to have more sources or citations. But if you're talking about a more kind of applied case kind of question, then you can have fewer citations. That's totally understandable. Any other questions? I'm also kind of looking through the Excel sheet.
Emanuela Aina asked, what is the relevance of taking a comprehensive exam as it relates to a PhD program?
Well, again, this is my personal thought, and Dr. Samai can chime in later. As I said at the beginning, if you are interested in pursuing a PhD program, I strongly encourage you to pursue the thesis option instead of comps option, because in comps you are required to review and critique a lot of the theories, but you are not conducting independent empirical studies. This kind of ability to conduct independent research is very critical for someone pursuing a doctoral study in the future. So you might want to use the thesis option to demonstrate that you have the ability to do that.
I do agree with Dr. Ni. I think it's very important that you have something to show for and typically doing a thesis, it's going to add some value to your program. And then when you apply for a PhD program, sometimes they ask you for a writing sample. So if you have a thesis to submit as a writing sample, it's going to really make much better impression. And you are more likely to be offered than a position. And usually, let me emphasize, PhD positions tend to come with financial support. So they are very much in high demand and limited. So the competition is very, very strong there. So that's another thing to consider when you're doing. Very often we emphasize, we'll talk about thesis on our next session next month, in a couple of weeks. It's going to focus on thesis, but for comms, I think it's very important that if you look at the people who take our comms, most of the students tend to be more professionally oriented. So that's kind of the profile typically, and people who have a bit of more of a, I guess, limitation in terms of how long they need to be in the program, because this is the other thing. Typically people like to finish it fast, and in our experience, it might not seem that way, but in our experience, doing comms sometimes is faster just because the rules of engagement are very clear. You know exactly what to expect. You know exactly what's expected from you, and it's more of a very, I guess, managed process compared to the thesis or the applied projects where you are required to work independently mostly, right? So that's something to keep in mind.
Thank you.
The next question, Christine's page, she said, I'd like to know more about what to expect should I decide to go this route. I think Dr. Ni addressed a lot of aspects. Christine, was this to your satisfaction? Do you have any other questions?
No, that everything was answered. So thank you very much. This was very informative.
Okay. Criteria asked, please give me some examples of questions. Also in the past where many students chose an exam over projects, it would be great if they could share some experiences. Kritia, did you get your answers to your question? I provided the question bank, so those are some examples of questions, and I think we to some degree addressed that, but do you need the follow-up on this question?
No, it's okay. I already seen a lot of questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, wonderful. Pranya was asking best methods to prepare, how to study for comms. I think that Tony addressed that, but do you have follow-up questions to that, Pranya? Pranya? Okay.
Yeah.
And then Sarah Cantu says, is this the right path for someone who is currently in the communication field and is looking for management positions after graduation? Dr. Ni, what would you say?
I'll start. It really depends. I've had a lot of students who currently work and they are using this master's degree to kind of give themselves a bump in the career ladder. So for that purpose, because they are very busy, they are already kind of working a lot. So they tend to choose the comms option because they are very goal-oriented. They want to graduate, and the degree is really what matters to them, and they are already getting plenty of experiences in their current job, so they don't really need that additional thing from the applied project option. So that's why they choose comms. But I also know students who specifically have chosen the applied project instead of comms because they want to take advantage of the time while here, and then to do something that helps with their current job in their with their current employer. So it's almost like killing two birds with one stone. But you do need to remember, and I think the session on applied project, you will get a better idea. You cannot pretty much equate the applied project to something that you already do in your job, because that's not fair, right? You have to do something much more extensive using a lot of the theoretical perspectives here. But that's my kind of experience with some of my previous students. They would choose both depending on their purposes or goals.
And I just had one more follow-up question. So during the comms process, like I saw in the outline, it said that if we had any questions, we can reach out to our advisor. So once we've already started that, we can still contact and be in communication.
You can contact us, but only for clarification purpose. Like if you feel this wording is kind of confusing, you can ask us to clarify, but we cannot provide any help with the substantial content.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I have had actually similar experiences when students reached out to me and they were asking, you know, I'm not sure I understand this question properly. Can you please elaborate a bit more? And we try to be very comprehensive in the questions, as you'll see in the comprehensive in the comms bank. There's questions come with several part 1, part 2 to help you guide, right? But sometimes, you know, students require, and you are allowed to do things like that, right? Reach out and ask for clarifications. Okay, and then Simi Olove asks, what are the exams like? What is the best way to prepare? How are they scored? I guess we did address the 2 parts of the question. How are they scored? Did we address this, Lan? Would you like to?
Yeah. So in terms of the scoring, we, again, different committee members do it differently, although we have some kind of consistent standards. And that's why Dr. Tumai strongly recommended everyone to really get in touch with all the committee members, because you know the exact expectations of individual faculty members, right? But in general, we are going to grade your exam questions either as a fail or a low pass or a high pass. High pass, obviously, you have done a good job, very well integrated, and it showed us your mastery of the materials and your application of the theories. Low pass is like you have got most of the questions right, or not right, like you have covered most of the questions and you have really made your statements or arguments well, but then there are some issues that may be problematic, and we would like you to pay attention to them. But overall, we feel that this is a pass. It's just that not like completely like not like the high pass. And then the third one obviously is fail. You have failed to substantially prove that you have mastered the materials and integrate them in a whole coherent way. You have to pass all questions to pass the comps. If you fail one, unfortunately, you have to re-enroll the next time and then retake the question, the exam. However, when you retake the exam, you only need to re-answer the question that you have failed. You don't need to like redo everything all over again.
Now, I want to add on to that you cannot register for COMMs twice in one semester. So if you take the COMMs, let's say in spring, and you fail to pass all of the questions, then you'll have to wait till fall semester of next year, academic year, then to enroll again in them. So that's another kind of rule that we have sort of to keep in mind there as well. Well, these are all the questions that were posted online. Any other questions here? I'm going to open it up to the panel of people who are here right now. And I know some answers sometimes solicit more questions. So,
or maybe they are so overwhelmed that they don't.
Yes. Well, the other thing I think Lan or Dr. Ni already emphasized that, but another question I've been asked during advising this past semester was, when should I decide, right? And I would say honestly, if you are in your first semester right now, if you just started the program, you don't have to decide immediately. But be aware that you don't have too much time, especially if your intention is to finish. Also, it depends when you want to finish, right? If you are a full-time, if you are a part-time, what is your timeline? So if you want to finish, if your goal is to finish the program within 2 years, and that's how we have designed, if you are a full-time student, you can finish the program within 2 years, 4 semesters. That's how the program is designed. So in that particular situation, you would have to decide after your second semester. Literally, you need to decide if you're doing COMMs by the end of spring semester of your first year in the program. But definitely you need to take in consideration also the fact that there's a discrepancy in terms of credit hours for thesis, applied projects, and COMMs. So if you go with COMMs, you need to take an additional class. So that's why you need to plan ahead and you make sure you have taken all the classes you need to get the credit. So if you go at COMMs, you need 33 credit hours to graduate. If you do thesis, you need 30 credit hours. So that, or applied projects also needs 33 credit hours. So this is why I think it's good to have an idea what you want to do by the end of your first year, definitely for all of the students, because it's going to determine how many classes you need to take, and it's going to determine also how you go about strategically choosing the classes, because you need a minor, sort of, you need to think about strategically about your minor as well, and then recruiting your professors to be in your committee as well. So that takes time as a process. Other questions? Any other questions?
Really quick. So if I decide
your voice is kind of breaking up. Can you try again?
Can you hear me now?
Better.
Okay. So if I decide that I want to do comps, is it as simple as emailing who I want my advisors to be like in my committee and just saying, will you be a part of my committee, and then letting you know who's in the committee? Or is there a process I need to take to, reach out to them specifically?
Yeah, I think you need to first check with Dr. Tamai about your course credit so far, because you need to make sure that you meet the requirements before you start to take comps. And then, yeah, you reach out to a professor in your major area and ask if they can serve as your chair, and then let them know who you have in mind for the other 2 committee members. And then again, it's your responsibility to reach out to everyone and then fill out some kind of paperwork, and Dr. Samai will sign that. And then you can start the whole kind of preparation process. And then in the final kind of graduation semester, you enroll in that class with your advisor, and then you work on the exam.
All first year students, I have required them to choose a major advisor. And actually, I believe you have also chose yours, right? Or have, I don't know.
Well, so this is my second year, and I started off just with
Okay.
as Dr. Vardaman, but I haven't, I guess, formally picked a new one.
Okay, that's fine. So basically, the first year, I did not require this for the second, because most of the second year students already have a relationship, like you said, with Dr. Verdeman or some other faculty. But the first year students have been formally advised and asked to pick a major advisor. So that major advisor, everybody's going to have to meet with that every semester before enrolling in classes to make sure you enroll in the classes you need, you have a plan of graduation, plan, academic plan. So your major advisor should be able to tell you, together you're going to plan out the classes you take, you're going to be, and then get a sense when you are ready to get your exams. So the first advising will come from your major advisor. Once your major advisor tells you, you are ready now, then you come to me and say, hey, I've been advised, I want to take my comms next semester. And then there's some paperwork, then you'll have to sign up. And now that being said, although I'm asking all of the first year students to pick a major advisor, that major advisor can but does not have to be your thesis or your comms advisor. Professors, first of all, have the full liberty to reject serving on a committee. So that's number one. Number two, you as a student also have full liberty to choose somebody else. You start maybe being advised by a specific professor, but then you just want to work with somebody else. So that's why we want to have some structure, while at the same time giving everybody some flexibility to to work with people they have most common interest in. Does that make sense? Good. Other questions?
I have a question. So I'm checking the comms inventory, the document.
Mm-hmm.
Are those like the emphasis, like for example, this determine like depending of the person I decide to be my committed, those will be kind of the emphasis of the questions that are gonna be asked, or not really?
Most of the time, you're talking about the question bank that Dr. Samai has shared, right? It has all the different courses, and then the which professor provided which question, that kind of thing. So yeah, I would say most of the time the questions given will be kind of similar or along the same line of what you are seeing there, if a particular professor is actually serving on your committee.
Okay, perfect.
And the other thing to keep in mind is sometimes the questions are tailored to the type of coursework you are taking, especially these secondary questions. Like there's a theory question that you're going to be asked, or methods questions, and those tend to repeat very often. But then depending on the coursework you're taking, and sometimes we offer classes, right now we offer more classes because our faculty has changed, right? We have new faculty who are, offering very exciting classes. So some of the questions related to that coursework might not be reflected in the question bank, just because we try to update it all the time, and actually last time it was updated in January, so it's pretty outdated. But you need to keep in mind that some of the questions are also tailored towards your specific coursework, therefore they will change, they will be different most likely from what you're seeing in that bank. But the bank should give you a sense of what type of questions, how to prepare, how questions are framed, right? For that reason. Great question. Other questions?
Just had a question that I forgot. I'll come back.
Sure, we are scheduled to be here till 4, but so we can come back to your unique West question. Anybody else has any question?
I remember.
Okay.
Sorry. So since second years, we're not required to have a methods professor on our committee. So would our question from methods just be like random, quantitative or qualitative, or can we choose, or how does that work?
We again, this might vary depending on like the individual student, but usually we would give a question broad enough that you have the flexibility to choose to focus on specific like methods or methodology or approaches that you are more comfortable with. But overall, the expectation is that you need to be familiar with some of the basics in both quantitative and qualitative. In my experience, again, Dr. Tamai may add later additional information later. In my experience, usually the questions for methodology are very similar to what you are going to see on the question bank, especially if your committee members do not consist of anyone who has taught you the methodology class. Basically, that means we're not going to just kind of randomly come up with a question without like any three of us teaching you the actual methodology class. We'll try to really keep things to the very basic level.
Yes,
so you don't need to worry. Yeah.
And most of the faculty in our department have a training in quantitative and qualitative methods. Like I honestly think all of us do, right? Like our department is very much interdisciplinary, but also like multi-method kind of approach. So each of the faculty, and the methods question is one of those questions that gets pretty much evaluated thoroughly by all your committee members, have the equal weight on it, because we are trained to understand that. So that for that reason, it's important that when it comes to the preparing for the methods section of the comms, you discuss this with all the faculty in your. For example, you are required to have a faculty who is in your major, right? So you discuss questions that are pertain to your major with that faculty. Then you're required to have a faculty who is in your minor, and then you discuss questions in your minor with that faculty. But then questions on methods you discuss with everybody. Does that make sense? Okay. Other questions? Okay.
I see that most of them, well, except for Kellen, Uniqua, and Ashley, I think most of them are first year students, so they might be still kind of thinking through everything, and they may eventually decide not to take comps or anything. But again, if any of you has any additional questions or confusion or anything, feel free to reach out to me, to Dr. Samai. We will be more than happy to email back to you. It's not like just one session here and then we're done. we're still here to help you all.
Yeah, and we typically organize these sessions every year during the fall. So first year students who might be right now overwhelmed by all this information will have a chance to come back next year and then listen to the same information, maybe more, and answer, have answers to follow-up questions that you might have by that point. So don't worry about it. We got you covered. We are very much hands-on in terms of providing all the information you need to succeed. There are no surprises. I hate surprises myself, so my intention is to avoid surprises. Okay. Oh, okay, there is, okay, wonderful. Sarah Cantizus, thank you. This was helpful. I'm glad to hear that was helpful. Well, if there are no more questions, then we're gonna conclude this session today. And let me just stop recording.